microscopic level, they exist to kill. They travel, they attack, they hide, they even gather together in defense maneuvers. Pathogens are the enemies of every member of the healthcare team. On Pathogens and PPE, we give you the tools you need to fight these threats and win. So sit back, tune in, and let's make these microbes tremble at the sound of your name.
Welcome back to the Pathogens and PPE podcast. This is episode number 5, all about environmental cleaning. I'm Jill Holdsworth, Manager of Infection Prevention at Emory University Hospital, Midtown, and I am joined in the studio today with my good pal, Kenneth Campbell. Kenneth, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, even though a lot of our listeners, I am sure, already know a lot about you.
Yes, everybody, it's me, Kenneth Campbell. I'm the Director of Sterile Processing for the Berkshire Medical Center out in Massachusetts. As Jill said, glad to be here, and let's get this going.
Awesome. I'm so excited about this episode. I know this is something a lot of people are struggling with in their department, so hopefully we can give some people some good tips, and you leave this episode with some things that you can take home and improve on. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back in a second. Hey everyone, we are here for the Pathogens and PPE podcast, and we are talking all about environmental cleaning. I'm here with my co-host, Kenneth Campbell, and we have 2 awesome guests in the studio today. We have Kley and Paul Gentile, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves for everybody real quick. Do, why don't you go first?
Sure. So as Jill said, my name is Kley, and I'm actually an infection prevention fellow within the clinical and scientific affairs team for Clorox Healthcare. I am a registered nurse, and I'm also dual board certified in infection control and epidemiology, where I practiced in hospitals for over 20 years. I also hold a master's degree in public health, and I have an undergraduate degree in microbiology.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here, Do. And Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Jill and Kenneth, for having me. I'm Paul Gentile. I'm one of the infection preventionists here at Yale New Haven Hospital. I've been in infection prevention now for almost, I would say, 8 years now. I'm a board certified and fellow of APIC as well. And my background is public health, and I was a CNA for quite some time now, over a decade. So glad to be here.
And the most important part that Paul left out is that we worked together here in Atlanta for several years. And so I'm just tickled to have Paul here with me again in the studio. And this is so much fun to have all of you here together to talk about environmental cleaning. I think this is such an important topic to talk about in regards to sterile processing. I think that this is one of the biggest struggles that some of our team members are facing in their departments today. So I think that this is a great thing that we can all talk about together from all of our different fields. So I just want to kind of open it up now with a general question. And Paul, I'm going to start with you. What do you see as one of the biggest challenges that we face right now in sterile processing when it comes to environmental cleaning?
I think, one of the biggest things that I remember when we go rounding, and Jill, when we went rounding together, a lot of the things that we see in environmental cleaning is, just the cleanliness of just the environment and the decon and the prep impact. I think it's very important in terms of when we're dealing with like sterile items. I think, and especially in the prep impact, I see sometimes dust. There may be dirt and debris in those areas. And as an infection preventionist, I'm like, well, if these are sterile items, we should definitely be making sure that these areas are clean as possible before these instruments go to a procedure for a patient. So those are some of the areas. Our decon area as well is the dirty side. So I definitely know that area has a big opportunity for cleaning and disinfection too, because there is a lot of bloodborne pathogens present in that type of environment. So I think it's very important that we prioritize our cleaning efforts in that area as well.
Paul, when you're rounding and you see these type things, because I know you say if you see dust in the prep and pack side and things like that, is that from, you think, and just going in general, do you think that's a SPD environmental services like collaborating? Do they need to find out who does that part? Because I know that's one of the challenges I hear about. Who does the cleaning?
Exactly. And I think it's very important for infection prevention to collaborate with our environmental services partners and also include sterile processing, our technicians as well in that conversation. I really think it's very important that when infection prevention identifies these deficiencies or areas of opportunity, that we make sure we have those partners together so they can at least see what we're seeing and make sure that we're addressing some of those issues in the real time and how to sustain it from preventing it happening in the future.
Yeah, and if I could chime in, I have a story from my last hospital, and it all started with complaints from SPD to EVS that the trash cans were not getting emptied throughout the day. And so when I went down to kind of just find out what is going on, boy, did I go down a rabbit hole I didn't know I was going to be going down, because I found out that we didn't really have a process. We didn't have a great process for even cleaning that entire department. And folks did not realize we're supposed to be doing pretty much the same cleaning and disinfection in that department as we do in the OR, and that includes the terminal cleaning. And so what I ended up doing at my facility was I brought the team together, the SPD manager and some of the key SPD folks, and then the EVS workers and EVS manager myself. We walked through that department, and to Paul's point, we drafted a cleaning responsibility grid of, and we went item by item. We went clockwise around that room. Who's going to clean this? Who's going to clean that? Oh, okay, EVS will clean the outside, but SPD is responsible for, like, say, the sterilizer unit. You guys are responsible for, the maintenance on that and cleaning that thing when it's supposed to be clean. It actually turned out that document ended up being not only a cleaning responsibility grid, it was a great exercise. It also kind of became our service agreement for the department. And then we ended up using it as a checklist that they would sign off every day. And we were able to show that to surveyors when they came in that, yes, these things were being addressed and being done. So.
No, I think that's a great one, because I actually did the same, and we actually adopted that into policy, because once you get those responsibilities and you make people accountable for it, then you can actually say it's been getting done. That's the part I like about what you just said there.
Yeah. And what's nice about having it documented is if managers change hands, or leave or whatever, you can fall back on that document. You don't have to start from scratch.
Yeah. And a couple things to add to that. I think that we also have to consider the frequency in which certain things need to be cleaned. And I think this is really important, especially in decon. And we go through this on the clinical floors too. And I think it's very adaptable to sterile processing, because there are things that need cleaned in between when EVS comes and cleans. And that's why it's adaptable to what we do on the clinical floors. Just because, EVS might be coming in to do a terminal clean at night doesn't mean that's the only time that it needs to be cleaned. So there also needs to be some discussion about, if you see this, even though we know EVS comes in and cleans it at night, that doesn't mean that we can't do it also at 1:00 in the afternoon, because we know EVS isn't going to come until 2 a.m. So there's also that consideration. And then I love what you said about that, Doe, about going through and saying, this is my responsibility, this is yours. I think that is such a great point. And one thing that we've seen brought up is, yes, the prep and pack counter surfaces are the responsibility of the department. But what about the back of those? The places that really accumulate dust on a daily basis? That's what the surveyors are going to get you on. And that's what the surveyors are going to run their finger across when they come in. But who actually cleans that stuff? Because EVS is going to hear the prep and pack tables are the responsibility of the department. So then no one ends up cleaning anything but the surface that's being worked on. So it's even more detail than just kind of listing out what is the responsibility of who. We have to actually get into the details of, you're not just cleaning the surface, you're actually cleaning the shelves, you're cleaning the arms, you're cleaning all of these different things, so that the surveyors don't end up running a white glove over every little piece of it and then get you on the one thing that you didn't have assigned for somebody to dust.
Hey, Jill, on that, I want to ask, so if in the middle of the day, we're in the trenches and we're going, and, it's 1, 2 o'clock and they got that morning clean, but you can see if you're busy, when is the optimum time for that to happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I'll ask Paul what he thinks.
Yeah, I think, the EVS team and sterile processing will need to just collaborate together and try to figure out what is the optimum time for them to, because both EVS and sterile processing, they're both busy departments. So I think it's very important that they collaborate together to figure out what's the best time for EVS to come in and clean those areas, and just to keep that constant communication, I think is very important.
I was going to add that, if it's soiling that occurred, during the workday, I don't think we should be calling EVS. Just like drives me crazy if the nurses have a little spill of blood, they call EVS. It's like that's not what they're there for. So if soiling occurs during the workday, during a shift, I see no reason why the staff in that department can't just grab a disinfecting wipe and take care of it in the moment. And I think that it made me think of, do we, how we have the 5 moments for hand hygiene? Do we need to, in SPD, kind of go, what are those, maybe it's not 5, but what are those moments that the SPD staff should stop and wipe something down, like that pass-through counter window?
That's such a great point, Doe. And I was going to mention that too. Kenneth, your question is a great one. But what are those moments that would make you stop and say, wow, I really need EVS to come in here because there's body fluid spilled all over the floor? Obviously, that's different than saying, we have a contaminated counter now, and now we need to wipe it off with a disinfectant wipe. So I think there's different types of situations that we could provide more guidance on to our team members to make sure that they understand that this is what EVS is doing at night. This is what you're doing at the beginning of your shift. And these are the things that we may need to do in the interim because it's just part of our daily workflow.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. Like, I've been part of surveys where they put the sterile instruments after they're cooling, and you see dust bunnies. And you're like, well, I know they were here cleaning, but what were they cleaning? What were they doing? And then I've been in a lot of SPDs where cleaning is not their forte. They say, no, that's an EVS thing. So we got to get out of that mindset. So that's what I'm trying to find out. Like, so if we're busy and we're in the thick of things, who makes that moment? And I guess like you had the 5 moments of cleaning is something that could be, hey, that's a good idea. We might have to make that up.
And infection control is everybody's responsibility. I always used to tell folks at my last hospital, your mother doesn't work here. Like if you work anywhere but a hospital, if you were in Walmart, if you worked at Walmart or wherever, would you call EVS to come clean up after you? No, you would. If you spilled your coffee or whatever, you're going to sit down at a desk that looks less than clean. You're going to wipe it yourself. And I don't know why in the hospital we think we can just pick up the phone and call EVS and, put them out in that manner.
Though I would say somebody might call EVS in Walmart. You never know. You never know.
There ain't going to be nobody there. They come in. They come in at night.
Doe, I think you're making every EVS person's heart happy right now, because I think that, as IPs, we consider them part of our team, and we try to protect them too. This kind of stuff drives me nuts. And when I see trash on the floor, or I see somebody kind of like refusing to clean up something because they're just like, well, EVS will do it, that kind of stuff burns me up, because we're all adults and we're all humans, and we all need to be working as a team and pitching in. There are obviously things that EVS are the experts on, and terminal cleaning, the ORs, and sterile processing should be something that we consider them experts on. But wiping a counter that got dirty is not something that we must have EVS on, and that is something we all need to take responsibility for. So I love this conversation because I always feel very protective over EVS because they are such great partners for all of us. So this is just an amazing conversation. I love it.
And it should be built into the workflow, right? It should be one of those steps in that workflow.
And, we also have to make sure we have disinfection products available. And, I've talked about this in some of my other podcasts that if we want people to wash their hands, if we want people to disinfect surfaces, we have to make sure that we are making availability of tools, products, PPE, all of that. We have to make sure that where we want them to use anything, that it's in reach easily and that it's as easy to work into their workflow as possible. If we make things hard on people, they absolutely will not use it. So we have to set them up for success and make that success as easy as possible. And so I would suggest, if there are any IPs listening, that you go down to your sterile processing department, kind of walk through whatever you're thinking. Is it you want them to disinfect surfaces more? You want them to wear gloves more? You want them to clean their hands after a glove disposal more? And just see if you feel like they are set up for success. Do they have hand hygiene near where they throw away the gloves? Do they have the disinfection wipes where you want them to use them? And if the answer is no, then you need to make that happen so that they're successful.
Yeah, you have to make the right thing to do the easy thing to do.
Absolutely.
On that note, Paul, so something to what Jill just said, having those things available. I know that I've been in many SPDs, and yes, we may have the wipes, but for some of that other stuff that we don't want to have to call EVS for, that stuff is not readily available to them as far as the other disinfectants. How do we handle that?
So I think one of the most important things is to work with your SPD and then also trying to work with your infection preventionist. Your infection preventionist, if you have that relationship with them, they are big advocates of SPD. And like we were just talking about with EVS, and if there is like PPE or supplies that you may need assistance with trying to get for your area, your infection preventionist can definitely advocate for you and try to arc up those concerns or escalate them to the appropriate individuals. And I know definitely, Jill, you've definitely done a lot of that in past experience too, when SPD definitely had a hard time trying to get some of those supplies and equipment.
Kenneth, I'm curious to know, what are you thinking about when you say the things that you don't have that you would like that maybe EVS is using? Just give us some examples.
Say if it is a minor spill, I know I've been at SPDs where they don't have the appropriate mop that just lives in SPD, which is why they end up calling EVS. So having a storage closet, I guess, of their own per se, even though it's going to fall back to, do I call EVS or do I get the mop out? Or, it's just that flip-flop of, again, if it's clearly identified, but in that one moment where you say, hey, that's a sterile process that can handle that versus EVS. Do we have a mop, the appropriate mop? Do we have a bucket? Do we have these things readily at the access so they can do that kind of stuff?
I would say to that one, Kenneth, that, if it's a small spill, or I go back to like you sit down at the desk and it's not clean, right? Those are the kinds of things I think the frontline SPD staff can and should be able to handle with the wipes that are readily available, as Jill mentioned. If it's a bigger spill and you're going to need more tools like the mops, then yes, I would say it's appropriate to call EVS. But I've been in hospitals where a nurse might spill a couple cc's of urine and they'll call EVS. And it's like, really?
Okay.
Really?
No, this is such a great conversation because I'm going to use my favorite phrase, risk assessment. And I think it's a great thing for everybody to do a risk assessment in their facility with IP and EVS present to say, here's what we have in the department. Here's what we feel trained and capable to do. Some people will have spill kits in their departments, just like a clinical floor. And is that something that you have people trained to do? You can't just stick a spill kit in a department and expect people to know how to use it. So there are steps you can take to make the department feel more prepared for certain things, but some training would have to be done. But we also want EVS in the department to be on the same page too. And that's where it's a great collaboration to say, if we have a spill that's like this, we're going to call you. And EVS will make sure that you feel comfortable handling spills of X size, like Doe said. So I think that's a great question to bring up, Kenneth. And I think it's a great way to collaborate with everybody to make sure everybody's on the same page and feels comfortable.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say something like if it's going to take more than a handful of paper towels to sop it up, and then do the cleaning part, then that would be when you consider bringing EVS in. If it's going to need a mop, you're definitely going to need EVS.
Yeah. And I've seen people, with the wipes, using those wipes for everything. And again, that's one of those questions, which wipe is appropriate, or, having those type of conversations, because you can't use a purple top for everything, even though people would try.
That is a great question, and it's right up my alley. The appropriate wipe is the one that has kill claims for the targeted pathogens, and I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of our EPA-registered healthcare-grade disinfectants, including the wipes, in hospitals today do have those bloodborne pathogen kill claims. So you should be good there.
So on that note, just for somebody may be listening, so why do we have purple, gray, orange, so many different colored top wipes if they all can do the same thing?
I can take that one. As you know, we have different formulations, right? And we're dealing with a lot of different pathogens. We need those stronger disinfectants, like the bleach products, for example, for those harder to kill pathogens, like your C. diff. And bleach is also great for blood and body fluid cleanup. For your everyday cleaning, typically something like a quat or a hydrogen peroxide-based product is great. It really depends, too, on, what are the surfaces being cleaned. I go back to hydrogen peroxide. It's a great product in operating room and SPD because of it's very compatible with like the stainless steel. I do worry a little bit about the quats because we're dealing with Candida auris these days. And, these patients come in colonized without symptoms. And by the time we recognize them, we've been cleaning with a quat, which probably most hospitals use, which doesn't kill. Quats alone don't kill Candida auris. So I guess where I'm trying to go with this, we select our products based on what are the pathogens we're targeting, but also, you got to look at that surface compatibility. I will say that there's a Joint Commission resource that what they recommend is a facility should really carry no more than 2 to 3 disinfectants, with one of those being a sporicide. Because the more you carry, as you know, the more your staff have to remember. So it makes it harder for everybody. Oh, what's the contact time on this one? So that's just a general recommendation that I've seen in a Joint Commission resource document.
So talking about what you just said, I want Paul to take this one because you said a lot of terms that maybe some of our sterile processing department listeners may not be as used to as some of our IP listeners. So Paul, if you might give a little in-service on contact time, choosing the right disinfectant, and perhaps who to go to if you work in sterile processing and you're just not really sure what disinfectant you're supposed to be using or how to use it. The normal IP in-service.
Yeah, no, and Doe, you definitely touched on the variety of different types of disinfectants and chemicals that are being used in the healthcare environment. And I think, if SPD is unsure of what type of disinfectant they should be using, this is another partnership they can do with their environmental services, their infection preventionists they could reach out to, or even their own supervisor in their department. But it all depends, too, on what's in that SPD environment. What do they need to clean? What type of disinfectant wipe is compatible with the surfaces or equipment that may be in those areas? I think one of the biggest areas that I see as an opportunity is just the contact time, just understanding what is the kill time or the wet time, that surface needs to stay wet for to actually kill those pathogens, and understanding what wipe can actually be appropriate to kill that specific pathogen. Those are some of the things that I feel like from an SPD's perspective, we need to make sure we evaluate and we provide them with the appropriate disinfectants so they're actually killing those organisms.
I think that was a good point, Jill, because we hung up signs, because you're right. A lot of SPD people are not going to understand wet time and, all that stuff when you say it. So having those extra conversations, because I've seen people that wipe down the desk and they go straight to work. It's like, wait, you can't do that, because they don't understand how we're given that education on that kind of stuff. So this is a very important thing. I appreciate us talking about that.
Yeah, understanding the why, I think, is always important, no matter what topic we're on. And Paul, what advice would you give somebody if during a survey they're asked what the contact time is of the disinfectant and they suddenly forget?
So if they forget, they can always contact their infection preventionist, but I always will refer them to just look at the container. They definitely should just make sure they reference that. Never give a range saying it's like 2 to 5 minutes, because it's going to be a solid number. So you want to make sure that you're just looking at the manufacturer's instructions for use and just following that, and that will be your answer. So.
Yeah, thank you. It is never wrong to refer to the packaging, refer to the container, and it's usually right on the front. It's best just to make sure you know where to find it. Here, we always posted flyers with the pictures of the containers with arrows pointing to where it was. So, because people get nervous, and so at least if they remember where the little number is, they can remember where to reference it. Joe, I'm going to wrap this up with a general question to you. This question really could be a podcast session of its own. But with the new Amendment 1 to ST 79, all about cleaning of SPD, what advice would you give someone who leads an SPD area to getting started if they feel like they're starting from zero, starting from scratch with following these new guidelines in the ST 79 standard? Where do they go? Who do they involve? How do they get started?
So get with your infection preventionist, because I think too that it's important, and a lot of folks don't understand this in the hospital. A lot of managers of other departments don't know this. The IP has that oversight. We're the one responsible for all cleaning, disinfecting, and sterilization activities and policies in our facility. So you really should be running any questions along these lines. Product selection, how we clean, when we clean, that should be run past your infection preventionist. But I think they are a great resource that we all should be tapping into whenever we have these questions.
Awesome. And Paul, how about you? Any closing remarks?
I think it's very important that, like Joe mentioned, in terms of the ST79, Jill, I know you're definitely very knowledgeable on the ST79 AMI standards as well, but I think it's very important that SPD collaborates with their infection prevention department and really decipher that standard and making sure that things that are mentioned in there are actually being adhered to in practice. So like even when we do rounds, like as infection preventionists, we should make sure our audit tools actually include some of those requirements while we're rounding. So if we do identify deficiencies that go against that standard, then at least we're addressing them in the real time and working with our SPD partners.
Great. And Kenneth, I'm going to give you the last word here.
From an SPD's perspective, I think that everything that was said today was great. Again, I even learned some stuff myself. But speaking on the, education and collaboration between the different entities, I think that is something that we have to push more, because again, in SPD, there is always going to be that one moment where is it us? Is it EVS? But again, as Doe said, carefully telling or instructing on who does what. I think that's a very good part of that, building that collaboration, like Paul said, like making sure that we are working together and, bringing this to the forefront. Because, yes, you're right. Even though we say terminal clean, is it being done? During the day, is any cleaning being done? Is that one time in the morning good enough? Is that one time at night good enough? Those are the questions that, you're right, Jill, we could keep talking about forever on this. But again, bringing to the forefront of making that a collaborative effort between all three parts, EVS, IP, and sterile processing.
Takes a team.
Absolutely. Great way to close, Kenneth. And that is all we have time for today. I feel like this flew by. This was an awesome episode, and there's so much more to unpack when it comes to cleaning and sterile processing. Thank you all for joining us. Joe, Paul, thank you so much for being our guest. Kenneth, you're an amazing co-host. Thank you so much. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you.
Man, everybody, did you hear that? Think about it. SPD collaborating with EVS and IP You cannot go wrong with those combinations. Look at it from wet times to, hey, high dusting and knowing your role in the process. Those are the things that stuck out today for me. What stuck out for you? EVS doesn't have to be called for everything. SPD can be a partner in that and do the little things. Let's work together. Let's make this great.
I loved how we talked about rounding with key stakeholders and making sure EVS came along with rounds. It's not just IP rounds. It's not just SPD rounds. It's really quality rounds is what we should be calling it, right? If we're rounding and we see that things are dirty, if EVS is with you, how much better will that be for everybody? And I loved how we also talked about making sure items were available where they needed to be available. If we want people wiping down things during the day, what are those things? And do we have the necessary tools and equipment and products to make people successful? So how do we make that happen? We do a risk assessment, and risk assessments are done with an interdisciplinary team. So think about that as you go back to your departments and to your jobs. Pull together a team, do walkthroughs in the department, and make sure everybody is set up for success. Thank you all for joining us today. Don't forget to wash your hands and keep fighting dirty.
Thanks for tuning in to this exclusive podcast series on pathogens and PPE. For more information and clinical resources to help you fight dirty, make sure to follow us on social media by searching for Beyond Clean and Transmission Control.